Hey guys, here with Kajan Johnson, here in beautiful Vancouver, Canada, actually doing some cross training at Tristar Gym. He's also the co-owner of that gym, is that true?
Yeah.
All right. So just to give you a little bit of background about Kajan, he's a UFC fighter. He's also co-owner of Tristar, like I just said. He's a BJJ brown belt. He's an artist. He writes and makes music. He's also a fighter rights advocate, which I think probably he's very well known for these days. He's 22, 12, and 1, which puts him at over 35, or right at 35 fights, which is a lot of fights. He was a competitor on the Ultimate Fighter Australia versus Canada. And your next fight, do you have any idea when that's going to be?
That's kind of up to Iaquinta, but I'm hoping for January. Come on, Al, let's go.
So I've heard through social media and being your friend as well that there's a situation with Mr. Al. And do you want to tell us a little bit? Like, is there any kind of personal beef there? Is it all social media?
Well, I have nothing against the guy. He's a little bit of a madman, but he seems to have a problem with me because I put his name in a rap song. I didn't say anything bad about him. I just rapped that I wanted to fight him. But I think he has more of an issue with kind of who I am as a person. He doesn't understand me. He doesn't understand how I fight. He doesn't understand some of the things that I do and say. So that makes him angry. So yeah, that's the beef pretty much.
All right. Well, so hopefully you fight Mr. Iaquinta. Iaquinta, I say his name?
Al Iaquinta.
Al Iaquinta is called Al, Angry Al.
Yeah.
Actually, he has the same nickname as you, right?
Yeah. His nickname's Ragin, or Raging. I think he has a G on the end. Mine's Ragin, but it doesn't really work with his name. It suits him. Maybe even more than me because I'm not all that raging all that often anymore. Sometimes I do, but yeah, he's definitely upset quite often. So I understand why he was given that nickname. It just doesn't really work poetically with his name. There's no alliteration. There's no rhyming. So I think it would be better if it was Angry Al, personally.
I agree. Maybe you guys, if you fight in January, winner gets to keep the nickname.
Yeah, that's kind of in the talk. I'm down. I don't know if he's down. I'm down. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the fight fans and MMA fans all over the world, they like to see kind of that entertainment aspect, the controversy. So hopefully that does happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of controversy, I'll just segue right into the Reebok situation. If you're not familiar, Kajan was the fighter that stood up at the UFC athlete retreat last year. I guess it was. Has it been a year yet?
Not quite a year. It was in May.
May. Yeah. I was there. I was in attendance and got to see it. It was pretty awesome. Basically, long story short, Kajan just stood up and spoke for the fighters on the injustices that have been happening throughout the Reebok deal. If you could choose one thing to happen to maybe help the situation, what's one thing that would solve, the Reebok situation and maybe some of the injustices that are going on in the UFC and the sponsorship situation?
Well, it's really not one thing, but the first thing that needs to happen is the Ali Act, the Ali Expansion Act, needs to get through Congress, which is very close to getting through Congress now. I believe we just got our 50th co-sponsor, which means automatically we go to the next step. I don't remember exactly what that step is because I'm not all that fluent in American politics. But I know that we needed to get 50 co-sponsors on the bill. We got that number. I believe that the original Ali Act, the one that's currently a law for boxing, I believe they had like 20 something co-sponsors. So us almost doubling that now speaks volumes to some of the momentum that we have behind this bill. It's going to be a very, very good thing for us.
That's awesome. So, I mean, I know a little bit about the Ali Act. I know it would give fighters a lot of benefits. If you could just name a few of what the Ali Act, if passed, would actually do, that help.
So, number one for me is it would create an outside sanctioning body, or it would allow for an outside sanctioning body to be created that would help to regulate the rankings. So, the UFC wouldn't be able to punish fighters for using the rankings for not doing their bidding, or say if they don't like the way a fighter fights, even if he's winning, they can remove him from the rankings. It will also get rid of coercive contracts. So contracts that, for instance, make you sign away all your ancillary rights in perpetuity throughout the universe for all eternity. That's not going to be a thing anymore. That'll be illegal. And there's a number of other things as well that are going to be very good for us. But in my opinion, those are the two most important for me personally, because a lot of fighters should have gotten shots at the title and don't get the shot at the title. The titles mean very little to me as they are right now. Like, I definitely want to be the UFC champion, but that title doesn't mean as much as it could, because oftentimes the best guy doesn't get the shot, or a guy will get a shot at it a lot sooner than he maybe should have, just because he talked in a certain way or finished fights in a certain way. When a guy like John Fitch, who never got a shot, just because he would decision guys more and he was more of a grappler. If you're a grappler in this game, it's really, really difficult to get a title shot. So, yes, that's something that's very important to me.
That's awesome. I, as a fighter, hope that it gets passed. If you are a fighter, there's really no downside to it. So I hope that happens. I want to talk a little bit about your background. Just, I mean, everybody knows that you're a Canadian fighter and you're the guy that stood up for Reebok, and you just knocked out Adriano Martins, which was amazing. September 9th, the Edmonton fight card. I was also on that card, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But I mean, a lot of people don't know how certain fighters got started. Are you from Canada? Like, did you start as a little kid doing, a specific discipline? Tell us about that.
Okay, so I started a long time ago. Like 2002, I started doing martial arts. Well, actually, very, very late 2001, like December 2001. I started training in No Holds Barred, or what it was called back then, and then March 2002, I had my very first pro fight. There was no real amateurs, so it was called pro, even though I didn't get paid, and I think there was no knees to the head. It was 2 5-minute rounds. There's a bunch of rule differences, but there was no unified rules at that point, so pretty much everything was just pro. So unfortunately, it's still on my record. Well, actually, that one I'm not so worried, because I won that fight. But yeah, so I knocked that guy out in like 24 seconds with almost the exact same shot that I knocked Martins out with, which is pretty dope. And then I just got really hooked, and I fought like 9 times that year, and then just kind of never looked back, just kept fighting. I lost a lot in the beginning, that's why my record's kind of jacked up. But it shows that I've learned and I've progressed. If you really look at my record, you notice that about 2005, I have a lot less losses after that. Before 2005, I lost a whole bunch, right? So I had to learn kind of on the job, as opposed to doing a whole bunch of training for like 2 or 3 years first before having your first fight. Like I would recommend people do. I kind of just got thrown in the fire and learned from getting burned. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've heard stories since I've been in the mixed martial arts world, 7-8 years, not that long, but I hear that basically back then, when it was no holds barred, no weight classes, you kind of had to, like you said, learn on the job. So I don't think that was your fault. That's all they had. They didn't really have amateurs. So, but yeah, now we have amateurs and all that. So. It's interesting. So did you just start with MMA in general? Would you call yourself a freestyle fighter? Did you have any other background in anything else?
I had a background in skateboarding and street fighting.
Street fighting. So you might not be the only fighter to go from street fighting to professional fighting. So
Definitely.
Does that mean you were a troubled youth when you were younger?
A bit of a troubled youth, yes. I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I would never back down from a fight. So people would try to start stuff with me, or kind of start stuff with my friends, and I wasn't like super big or super tough, but I was kind of the tougher one of my friend group. So if anybody picked on us, then I was kind of the guy to like enforce.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So I mean, when you started fighting mixed martial arts, did you stop street fighting, or was that just?
Not right away. Anyway, not right away. I have stopped. I stopped street fighting. I think my last real street fight was over 10 years ago, probably 12 years ago now.
Except that guy in Edmonton at the bar.
That wasn't me. That wasn't me. That was my student, and he was reprimanded. No. Yeah, that we just had to bounce this guy for this establishment. They were having trouble with him. My student obliged very excitedly. But yeah, I stopped street fighting about 21. But those years from like 17 to 21, I probably had like at least 30, 40 street fights. So yeah, I fought a lot. I grew up in a like real gritty northern town where there's nothing to do, you know. So people would just drink and fight.
Yeah.
And I didn't really like drinking all that much. I drank a bit, but not that much. So I would fight a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think it almost, not always, but I'd say there's a high percentage of fighters that used to street fight before they made it an actual career. So you're not alone. So you now are the co-owner of Tristar Vancouver, where you train full time, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So did you always train there? Can you give us a little bit background of where you used to train?
Okay, so 2002 I started in Prince George Fight Club, which is the wicked name. Great to bring kids in. So I started there, and then I moved down to Vancouver in about end of 2005. I started training at Revolution Fight Team, which is in the valley in Langley of the Lower Mainland. And 2011, the very end of 2011, I moved to Tristar Montreal. And I trained there for just under 5 years, 4.5 years under Faraz the Hobby. And then about a year and a half ago, I moved back to Vancouver, to the Lower Mainland, and opened up Tristar Vancouver.
Awesome. So how's that going as far as running a gym or co-running a gym and fight camp and teaching the classes? Do you ever find that a little stressful or too much?
It can be, like on certain days I will get stressed out. There'll be a lot of stuff that I have to do, and I'll be really tired, and I won't get to eat on time or something like that, or won't get enough rest or whatever. But things are difficult, you know, like we're in a non-conformist industry, so you kind of got to be willing to do whatever it takes. And for me, that came down to, okay, I got to open this gym, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult for me to sustain a fight career. I needed to move back to BC, and there was other things I could have done, but then I would have been driving to 7 different locations for training, and that's a headache, and there's so much politics in this area that nobody wants to work together, can't train at all these different gyms. So I decided I was just going to open a gym and make them all come to me.
Yeah.
You know, so not everybody comes to me, but we've built a really wicked team here, and they all really help me. It's like a very cohesive unit. Like a lot of my guys will teach classes for me, and I'll teach classes for them when they've got their camps, and we all just kind of teach and help each other. I just kind of lead. I'm not really like the boss. I'm just kind of the leader.
Well, it's been how long since you opened the gym?
Just over a year. We opened the beginning of August in 2016.
Well, you just had a third round amazing knockout, and it seems to me like things are going great for you. So if you could, I mean, it's kind of a silly question, like where do you see yourself in 5 years? But I mean, there's so much, you know, as far as your gym goes, as far as your fight training goes. You're 33. Do you want to fight for 5 more years? If you could, ideally, what is your perfect situation in 5 years?
Perfect situation in 5 years. I will already have won the belt, defended it, and retired. And then I will be continuing, like going full bore into my coaching phase of my martial arts career, and also beginning to work on the acting phase. Starting to dabble into that and starting to do a lot more acting classes and stuff. As soon as my fighting's done, then I'm going to, like, my coaching will be number 1, and my number 2 is going to be acting, like training myself for acting, because I can act a little bit, but it's still quite cheesy. So, yeah.
All right. So that sounds good. Have the belt, go into acting, be successful. I mean, just as like another cheesy question, I like to know, a lot of people like to fight because, you know, the money or the fame, or they enjoy performing, but I like to ask every fighter, what is your favorite part about fighting?
My favorite part is probably the knowledge of self that one acquires. I've learned a lot about myself through fighting. It's kind of like it's like a teacher, you know. Like no matter what your issue is, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, it will be exposed through martial arts competition if you compete for long enough. And if you really want to be successful, you have to deal with that and face that in order to move forward and to continue to win or to start winning again. You got to face those demons. So that's probably my favorite part of it.
Yeah, you brought up spirituality, and it doesn't take a long conversation with you to figure out you're kind of a spiritual guy. Have you always been like that? And if not, or have you always been like that? And then do you also find that helps out with your fighting?
It definitely does, and I haven't always been like that. I've always had spiritual teachers. Like my stepfather is a sweat holder. He's been involved in the many he's been around and surrounded and running a lot of different ceremonies for the majority of my life. My mother as well is one of the only female pipe holders, well, white female pipe holders that I've ever met. Your battery's dying.
That is okay. It's all right. It will still film us.
Okay.
We're still
okay.
going. Yeah.
It's all good. Technical difficulties, no worries. But yeah, so it definitely does help me. I haven't always had it at the forefront. For a long time, I was atheist / agnostic. Like, oh yeah, I don't think anything actually happens. All that shit that they told me when I was a kid is bullshit. An eagle feather doesn't mean anything. It's just a bird feather. Like, who cares? There's no God. You die your worm food. But then a number of things happened in my life that kind of opened my eyes and awakened me. And since that happened, it's been a lot easier for me to understand the reasons why I'm in some difficult situations and go through some hardships. And it's allowed me to learn from those situations and become a better person a lot easier.
That's awesome. Well, that's pretty much all the questions I have. Traditional end of an interview. Do you have any sponsors that you want to thank?
Tristar Vancouver. Yeah, I'm not really sponsored by anything at this point. It's kind of difficult because we have the Reebok thing. Like, yeah, I'm wearing all Reebok, but they're not giving me enough money.
This is Reebok too.
Oh,
Reebok Sports Bra.
Reebok too. I get free clothes, yay! Actually, their clothes are a lot better this time.
Yeah.
I was a lot more happy with the kit that we got, but I want more money.
Don't we all? Well, if you want to sponsor Kajan, where would you find you at social media handles? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all across the board.
Okay, so Twitter is I am Ragin, and then Facebook is Ragin Kajan Johnson, and then Instagram is probably the one I'm most active on, and that's the Ragin one, THARAGIN, and the number 1.
Awesome. So, or you could just Google them and find all that too.
Totally.
So,
Google.
Awesome. Thank you, Ragin. I am appreciative. I'm enjoying Canada, and thank you for doing the interview.
Thank you.
Cool.